want to ask a question. How many people here have where addictions have touched your life? Just 4? 5? No. For addictions, have hurt your life directly or indirectly?
Addictions and what?
Well, let's say drugs and alcohol. I'm on.
Family members or friends?
Yeah, family members, friends.
Because you're gonna. This is an AI for good story, which we're talking about. And who wants to make money in the Midwest in manufacturing? Everyone. Who's monitoring? All. Just like
Microsoft
So this will be great. So just the 3 of us, and so if you guys are amenable, let's have more of a conversation rather than a Q&A, and so hopefully that will be more interesting for people. So a little bit as generalists, you know, I think we all have an opinion about AI, and one of the things that we're seeing, I think, is that, you know, the spread between the haves and have-nots are continuing to increase the super payers. And so in the old days, chatbots came out, OpenAI, people thought, hey, that's kind of cute. You know, the #1 application on or in use of OpenAI's chatbot is actually therapy. People talking to it and saying, hey, could you advise me on how to deal with my failed friendships? But what's happened is that you have companies where the employees are saying the AI that they have access to through the company's firewall and security privacy layers is pretty primitive. So you have plenty of people saying, okay, I've got my AI on my company laptop, and I have my AI on my personal laptop. And it's become a competitive advantage if they have OpenAI on their personal laptop. You know, and in the past few weeks, even Apple has gone out there and said, okay, we're kind of, you know, giving up a little bit. We're actually going to let people ask Siri to go directly to OpenAI. They're saying, okay, Siri, I don't want you to try to answer this question. Go to OpenAI and answer my question. And so some of us at this point are saying, you know, OpenAI is notorious for using their tools internally for 6 months before they let us use. And so is it getting to a point where it's OpenAI and everyone else?
So I'm not gonna speak to the technical terms of this, but first of all, I want to address what you're talking about, where people are using AI as like a therapy, right?
Do you advise that? I mean, you know something about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you look at addiction is the whole concept. Is one addict helping another, and less than 10% of people ever even cross that line to get help because there's a stigma of addiction. That happened to me. I got sober 2012, but I was scraping the bottom of the tank for 20 years because I didn't want to cross that line. I didn't want to tell anyone that I had a problem. So at Lucid, we for the last 2 years, we came out with a technology that's empathetic and will be there for you. Addiction is a disease of isolation. Will be with you and can talk to you the whole night, right? And the more we train it and the more we feed it from an empathetic standpoint, the more trust is built. I think people are using AI as a buzzword to get higher valuations, and that's not how AI should be used, right?
Are you using OpenAI or it's a separate platform?
Yeah, I mean, we're using, I know we're using about 7 of them, one of which is OpenAI.
And so people have an ability to choose which LLM they're talking to?
No, so when you're speaking, so our AI is called SAM, Sobriety and Addiction Mentor. And it starts recognizing emotional touch points based upon you're telling what, when you got sober, what your drug of choice is, and the more you feed it, it starts learning. And me, as a non-technical founder who has been through, addiction, I've been telling our AI team how can we eliminate the barrier to get the information to people that people are not willing to get right now. And then our team takes that AI, which I'm absolutely fascinated with, and starts learning and training Sam. And Sam gets better and better and smarter and becomes a predictive relapse agent on your user persona. And then you layer the next user persona and the next, and now we have about 350,000 members. It starts finding patterns of data to predict relapse. So the technical component of the OpenAI versus this versus that, I don't get involved with. What I get involved with is what is the outcome.
It sounds like you have different functionality in the platforms. It's not just the therapy piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm assuming you want people on the platform to have the best therapy possible.
Well, you're dealing with life and death, right? And
so how do you know that yours is better than OpenAI?
Yeah, so because I talk to Sam and I work with our team, I see what Sam answers, right? Like, so if you ask AI a question on recovery, they may be pro 12-step, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, cocaine, or it could be anti or any which thing in between, right? And so the wrong information has the power to actually kill. But the principles of what has been helping people in recovery for the last, not just since AA started, which 1935, but even before that, the principles are the same. Connection, acceptance, forgiveness, and amends, cleaning up your side of the street, taking ownership for what you did. Because it was never about the alcohol or the drugs. It was about what was it internally within us that was making us use the alcohol and drugs. And so if you just give it to AI and ask AI for the answers, you're going to get different responses every time.
Thanks for what you do. I've had friends who didn't make the journey, or the journey ended poorly. So I'm the least AI-centric person in the room. I deal with manufactured products. We make stuff, and we love the fact that these days investors will come and say, hey, there isn't as much of a moat in a software-only startup anymore because you've got engineers being replaced and AI, writing code. So they like the physical stuff again. That's kind of where we play. But to your question, there are people here with better data science backgrounds, but I don't think that it's still open. It's still early days. So I don't know that OpenAI has won. A number of our startups are looking in our fund portfolio are looking at incorporating AI. They didn't start obviously with pure AI use cases, but then they realized that there are use cases that are worth pursuing. Not everything needs AI.
Are you actively trying to stay ahead of the game on the AI side, or you feel like you're okay?
I mean, well, we're a fund, so we're looking for intelligent AI applications, not the .ai at the end of the name, right? So, for instance, we have a startup that scans vehicles and initially started as a replacement for taking your iPhone and walking around the vehicle to see where the dings and dangs are. So rental, dealerships, auction houses, etc. But lately they've been listening to the engine noise to predict what sort of, what could be going wrong. And that sort of prediction has always been there. I mean, in any huge data set, we've looked at patterns. We've been trying to predict for a long time. I think what these engines, these LLMs do is that you can compute so much faster now.
So what do you do, trying to select amongst these companies is not easy, right? I mean, I talked to some of the bigger firms and they're hiring a bunch of people, a bunch of consultants because let's say they have 100 companies in their portfolio, they think that half the company will benefit from AI and the other half will be hurt by AI. And then they will admit they don't know which half is which. And so it's not so easy to just go into a portfolio or a company you're thinking about investing in and saying, is this one going to benefit?
So we've actually, again, not competing against the biggest funds, but we've had a diligence process that's been focused on looking under the tech or under the hood, both from an engineering, so mechanical, electrical, etc., design, but also data, and looking at the data science. And we do that through a couple of partners that are data science experts and AI experts. We've been doing that. Opportunistically now, we see that certain companies are better suited than others. Like, would we invest if somebody had no AI use cases? Maybe in time, but not quite there yet. We're still looking for big problems being solved by smart.
One thing I was going to say is I remember, I don't know to the extent of this truth, but I think Apple was off and gave some wrong information that 6 months ago or a year ago or something like that. It was giving people the wrong information on flights, whatever it is, right? With addiction, that's like literally a life or death thing if you give the wrong information to an addict that needs help, right? For us, what we're trying to, at the end of the day, here's what I am. I'm a recovered alcoholic and addict, drug addict, right? I see 300 million people suffering from alcohol use disorder worldwide, and 38% of adult Americans suffering from some illicit substance use disorder. And when we did that show of hands, there's more people, but you don't want to raise your hand. What I will say is, what we want to do now with Sam is give as much data as we can to our user base, to the treatment centers, and then start evaluating the data. Because what's going on with addiction, especially what's happening with fentanyl now, and we have a strained relationship with China, so that's making things even worse, right? We need to give as much data and gather as much data as we can, because we have a massive crisis right now, and people are dropping dead left and right. And I will say something else. Alcohol use is the #1 problem across all EAPs and employee workforces, right? And so how do you make companies successful? Any company successful, their people need to show up for work. And so if alcohol use is the #1 problem, we have to try to figure out why this is happening. So we're trying to get Sam into benefits, the EAP benefits providers and employee workforces, because we need AI to help figure this out.
Oh, can I ask you a question? Sure. Can you follow up on that?
Because I remember it was Nick Davidoff from DBC Collective, if you don't know, he's invested in 150 AI companies. I asked him what would he want to have for his portfolio. He wishes they had all where basically have access to their Apple Health.
Yes.
Do you have something equivalent to that?
Yeah. So the next iteration, it's connecting to your Oura Ring or your Apple Watch, where it'll moderate your heart rate and Sam will know when you work out. So it'll say, hey, Paul, it seems like your heart rate's a little elevated. You're coming up on a pace where you used to drink. Maybe we should slow down and do a breathwork session. Would you like to do a breathwork session or something to that effect, right? And so we're tying it. So we partnered with over 36 brands in the sobriety and wellness space, a lot of them being wearables. And so that way it'll, based on those markers, it'll tell you that, hey, maybe we should slow down and do some breath work or whatever it may be. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, this is, a great example of where, we feel like AI is getting smarter and just let it go do stuff. But actually, a lot of applications where it may be life or death, or it may be just your privacy, people are trying to figure out how to control AI. And the best way that we can explain it is, I don't know if any lawyers here, but there's a fundamental difference between the Germanic legal system and the English legal system. And as a non-lawyer, the way I have had it explained to me is that the Germanic system, they say, these are the things that you are allowed to do, and everything else is illegal. The English system is the opposite. The English system says, you can't do these things, but you can figure out whatever you want in between, and that's fine. And so, I think partly because of where that comes from, AI, as well as most things, is based on the English system. So, AI is allowed to do whatever it wants to. And there are very few things that say it can't do certain things. So like, it can't teach you how to build an input bomb. And so what's happening is that, OpenAI says, we have an amazing therapy system, but it's possible that it will make a mistake. And it may have consequences. And so how do you have, at least for mission critical type applications, to really control AI, to be really safe? I think we have a question back there.
I was just going to say, we agree.
Yeah. They're going to talk about that. They're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment. I guess, like, we've been hearing a lot about AI and what happens to portfolios or what happens to ecosystems. How many startups are coming out of, again, going back to the comments earlier from Cincinnati or Berkeley or Stanford. But at the end of the day, it's still people that are going to make innovation and startups, right? We're not outsourcing life to AI. And yes, you have to have guardrails, but at the end of the day, I just...
Actually, that's not so true.
We are outsourcing life to AI.
AI can do lots of things. It could fill board positions. You could have a single AI derived company.
If you let it.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, there are companies with very few people that are unicorns, and AI is enabling a lot of that. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we have evidence of customer service agents. So you call up, XYZ company, you're talking to AI, and the AI is told, keep our customers happy. That is the primary objective. Well, we have AI agents going out there and lying to customers to keep them happy. And AI is not stupid. It can lie, it can make up stuff. It can tell you if it's sold, told to sell something, it will make up information relative to competition. And so, we have a long ways to go in making AI truly trusted.
I was going to say for a second, I love that you mentioned that, because we can use technology for good, or we can use technology for bad. 50% of people use AI for good, maybe 50% use it for bad, right? And same thing with gamification and you name it. And so it's funny. At first, I was against all AI, because when we originally created SAM, it was 365 assignments every day to keep you on track with your sobriety as your mentor. And every day, those same principles of recovery that have been keeping people sober for God knows how many years was fed by me and a team of people in recovery. So when our team said, you have to start using AI, I didn't trust AI. I was like, how am I going to know that they're going to give us the right answer? So our AI team started saying, well, then let's feed it. So I came completely skeptical, because you give an alcoholic the wrong information, he or she, or however they identify as dead. And so it is very scary with what you're saying. But to your point, when you look at the pure scale of the amount of people who are struggling, we have to do things that accelerate the help. So if we can accelerate the help and mitigate the risk, and in our case, risk is death. So it's a very fine line that we need a lot of help with. but it starts with collecting data. I will say, I think a big problem is when you're funded, people pushing revenue. You gotta have revenue, you gotta have revenue. Absolutely not, we need data. We need data, we don't need revenue, right? And so, but you know, we're here looking for the right people. We put 6 million of our own money into Lucid to take away that startup risk, right? But now we need help from people that understand we can't just push for revenue when we're dealing with impact. And I will say one other thing, people look at impact as a 4-letter word. It's actually, I think, a 6-letter word. But it's my belief that if the bottom line and the double bottom line, a lot of people think are mutually exclusive, when I can say that it's the double bottom line that will actually push shareholder returns. So we have to stop thinking about returns and start thinking about returns on life.
Yeah, and this is where, you know, at least at this point, people still have the ability to add some value in these types of things. So, you know, from little I can tell, what you're doing is you are adding a philosophy, whether it's judgment or data and science behind what you want to deliver to your members. And that's something where, you know, there's something called modularity. They claim that because the large language models are kind of language based, it's only able to think as maybe a person's language centered mind. Whereas a person's intelligence, people are saying, you know, your stomach has a big impact on your mental health. Actually, your kidney cells can actually have more memory. People are saying your skin cells can react to, you know, environmental issues. If you get cut, your skin cells will actually react to that before your brain actually ever thinks about it. And so the complexity of a person's intellect is a lot more complicated than people ever thought. And so with modularity, they're saying AI has only gotten to a piece of it. And so right now we still have the ability to add value, but it may not last long. I have a question over here.
I do. It's interesting because you said you're investing in looking at or have invested in a company that will look at the outside of the vehicle and listen to the engine sound to predict whether it's going to break down soon. And I haven't heard something that I know that Sam does is predictive, has a predictive relapse model. What is it? 89% of people who have gone into recovery relapse. It's a huge number. And the treatment centers benefit from it. They're actually economically rewarded when somebody's there. I'll see you in a few months, George. We don't want that to happen, right? Yeah. But that is what's happening. And that's what Sam's about. It has a predictive monitoring system of health biometrics and inputs that as it gets to know the person to keep them on track.
Yeah, Eric's got a question.
Paul, you just said we're at an inflection point, right? Many big professionals say that we've actually passed the inflection point. How much longer do you think it will be?
Well, I have to admit, I'm on the side of, you know, people like OpenAI have systems that surpass human intellect in many ways. So we're already kind of in that fuzzy area, I think, of you know, a lot of us think we're smart. We think that's how we're going to make money. That's how we get our ego boost. And to tell you the truth, it's the smart people who are going to, you know, have to figure out really hard what value added they offer in the future. And it's something to think.
I feel like we're at a hockey game and the next team is coming into a rink. Sorry. We'll have to hold that thought because we're stay on time. We have 2 more panels and then we have a beautiful evening to be interacting on all these subjects. Well, thank you, Paul, for moderating a good discussion. This next
emerging industries. So we have a seed VC investors all over several industries. We have someone who also, a VC investor, believes in the